prior to the time that they had a high school in Pattonville district area, anyone who graduated in Pattonville district from elementary school had a choice if they wanted to go to high school. They either went to Rittner or Normandy, and the Pattonville district, school district, paid tuition for us to go to those schools. But they, and I think Eddie went to school in Bridgeton area, and I went to school in Pattonville. Pattonville had the biggest school building in the area at that time. We had an 8-room school, and Bridgeton was a 1-room for all grades. And my wife Ruth, she went to Bridgeton school because they lived over that way. And see, in 1923, my family was living over in the Walnut Park area.
Oh, okay.
And in just before 23, by a real estate company in Wellston, Lisa Realty, built a subdivision, laid out lots in what they called St. Rock Road Terrace, which was between 80 Road and Long Road, right off the Rock Road. And so in 1923, my parents bought a lot out there and built a 2-room house. And so we moved out to this area then in 1923, and I was 4 years old.
Well, let's start a little bit from the beginning. Your name is, can you tell us your full name?
John, middle initial is E. My middle name is Emil, E-M-I-L. That was my uncle's name.
Oh, okay.
That was his first name.
Uh-huh.
And so we moved out here in 1923.
When were you born, John? Can you tell us?
I was born over in the Jennings area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I was 4 when we moved out, and my brother Lawrence was a year old.
And what year were you born?
I was born in 1919.
1919.
Yeah, October 1st, 1919. And so when we moved out here in 1927, I started to the Fifi Elementary School.
And how big was that school, did you say?
Well, I guess we had quite a few students, because there were about 100 kids went to Fifi Elementary from the Missouri Baptist Children's Home.
Okay.
And we had more kids from the children's home than we had from the district, actually. So I guess probably, I'm not sure, the enrollment at Pattonville Elementary when I started. Our Fifi Elementary.
And that was just down the road here on Fifi?
It was on the road to Fifi. The building was right across the street from where the community teachers
Credit union?
credit union is now.
Okay.
And it was a Spanish type building.
Oh.
And we had 8 rooms and a basement, and I guess it was probably the biggest school in this area.
Did it go up to 8th grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
First grade through 8th grade. They didn't have any kindergarten back in those days. And as I say, when I started in 1927 there, then I graduated in 1934 from elementary school.
And was Ed Banker in school with you?
Yeah, Ed and Helen Ed and Helen weren't in the, Bazans were in our area, but Ed must have went to Bridgeton School, because Ed wasn't in grade
He went
school.
to Junction School, I believe.
Okay,
Junction.
yeah, there was a
Junction.
Junction School. That's probably where Ed went. And then when the high school opened, see, they had the high school almost ready to be occupied in 19 35. And actually we moved into the high school when the high school was not quite ready.
And this was the one on St. Charles Rock Road across from Northwest Plaza? Is that where it was?
No.
No?
Oh, what, you mean the high school?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the building is long gone now.
Okay.
And when that school opened, we had no seniors, because anyone who had been in the Pattonville district and were in high school who were seniors were allowed to graduate either at Normandy or Rittner. And so in 1930, right after the Christmas break, in 1935, why, we moved into the high school building.
Mm-hmm.
And that, we had no seniors, but we had mostly freshmen, and we had freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. So that's when Ed and Helen and everybody started in Pattonville High School. And the first graduating class from Pattonville High School was in 1937. And that was just two girls,
Two girls.
Margaret Nunley and Irma Muse.
Did you know them?
No.
No. They graduated in 37. And then 38 was the second class, and that was Ruth Menson-Dick, James Peachy, Earl Payton, Anton Weber, and me. So Ruth and I had both gone our freshman year to Rittner, but we hadn't met at Rittner. I didn't know her. So when I first met Ruth when we were enrolled as sophomores in Pattonville High School. And when we graduated in 38, Ruth and I had our first date New Year's Eve, 1937.
And this was after you've already graduated?
Huh?
This was after you graduated?
Before we graduated.
Oh, okay.
We didn't graduate until May.
Now, what was her maiden name?
Menson-Dick.
Menson-Dick.
Yeah.
And where was her family from?
They were from, I don't know where they lived. They lived over on Gist Road.
Okay.
And Gist Road is no longer there, because it's...
Yeah, it still is, but not houses.
But where they lived is gone.
I
'cause
see.
That's part of the airport.
I
now.
see.
And so we had our first date in New Year's Eve 37. And we began, then from then on we dated. And we got married in 1941.
1941.
When I was in the Army then.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
Yeah, I was, my birthday was October 1st, 1940, and that was the same date that the Selective Service Act became law. And so I got a notice in May of 41 that I was to report, and I was drafted, yeah. And when I was drafted, I went to Leonard Wood and took my basic training there.
Mm-hmm.
And so and Ruth and I had both had jobs. Ruth was working for Midvale Dental Supply down on Grand Avenue, and I was working at Hickey Mitchell Company down in 4th Street.
What kind of work was it?
Huh?
What kind of place was that?
Mine was an insurance company.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so when I got my notice to report for induction to Jefferson Barracks on June the 14th, and I was at Jefferson Barracks for 3 days, and then I went on the 17th of June, 1941. I went to Leonard Wood, and I joined the 8th Infantry, the 6th Division there, and we went on maneuvers in Louisiana in September of that year.
Were you at Fort Polk, Louisiana?
Hmm?
Were you at Fort Polk, Louisiana?
No, I stayed at Leonard Wood, and we just had war games down in Louisiana at that time.
And what were they preparing you for at that time?
For the eventual invasion of Europe, yeah, because Hitler had taken over, most of Europe by that time. And so Ruth and I were, of course, dating all the time. And we decided in 41, with the way the war was and that maybe by the time we get married, because we didn't know what was going to happen. So we got married on December the 20th of 1941. And
Where were you married?
At Fifi Baptist Church.
Oh, really? Right across the street?
Right across the street.
Had you been members there?
No. Well, Ruth had. Ruth and her family went there they were there they went there from the early 30s. And I had gone, my family was Lutheran.
Oh.
And we went to church down at Grace Lutheran Church down on Eastern Avenue in Wellston. But eventually, after Ruth and I began dating, I began going to Fifi Baptist Church too. But I never joined there until after the war. So I stayed at Leonard Wood, and after we got back from maneuvers in 41, I was promoted to corporal, and Ruth and I were married on December 20th, and I was a corporal at that time. And in January, I got a promotion to staff sergeant. And I was happy to stay at Leonard Wood because every weekend I could get back home and spend the weekend. And we came in every weekend. And
now, did you two have your own place together?
no,
Did you have an apartment or any place?
No, we stayed at my mom and dad's because Ruth was still working and I was at Leonard Wood, so I was just coming home on weekends.
How did you get back and forth from Leonard Wood to St. Louis?
I had a car, and when I first went there, I only had a Pontiac two-door sedan, two-door coupe. And coming home on a weekend, I could only bring 2 guys with me. So they were paying me $3 every weekend to ride back and forth to St. Louis. So I decided, well, I would buy a 2-door sedan where I could haul 4 guys. And I traded my car, a 2-door car in. I got $195 trade-in, and I bought a 1939 Pontiac. And so then I had 5 guys, or I had 4 guys, let's see, 1, 2. I had 5 guys riding with me, and I was making $15 a weekend. So I was paying my car payment, was about half of that, and the other half I was supplementing my Army pay. So I was doing real well. And
what were they training you for to be while you were in the Army? What were they training you for?
I was in the infantry, and and as I say, I was happy there because I was getting home every weekend. And then in February of 42, they began selecting guys to go to officer training school. And the captain wanted me to go to officer training school, and I told the captain, well, I didn't want to leave Leonard Wood because I was too content going home every weekend. I wasn't about to leave Leonard Wood. And so I went before a couple boards. I went before quartermaster in finance school and passed the board review. But those schools were, you know, anybody who had any influence and were being inducted, they were going to those schools because they were the most advantageous. You weren't going into combat to with those schools. So the captain kept after me, but I just said no. I passed those boards. I was waiting for a call to go to one of those schools, but I never got it because anybody that had influence, you know, went in the army. But then in September of '42, why the division got, 6th Division got orders that they were going to Indio, California for desert training. And I went down and said, Captain, it's time for Abraham to go to Fort Benning to officer candidate school. Because by that time, several of my buddies had gone to infantry school and had come back on their delayed en route to the new assignment to go to, and those uniforms looked pretty good to me. And if I was going to leave Leonard Wood anyway, I thought I'd go to Fort Benning. So I went to Fort Benning in September of '42, got my commission as a second lieutenant in December of '42, and Ruth quit her job, and we knocked around the States until 1944, January 1944, when my division went overseas. And Ruth was pregnant at the time, and she came back to St. Louis to live with her family while I was in Europe. So
And where were you sent then?
I went overseas in a convoy in January. We arrived in England on January the 27th. And I was stationed in England until we made the invasion in 1944.
In Normandy?
In Normandy.
Oh.
My division, my unit, I was in the 8th Infantry, 4th Division, and I was in the first landing, the initial landing on Utah Beach, on the Khotan Peninsula in Normandy, yeah. And I got all the way across after we went up and captured Cherbourg, we came back down, made the breakthrough at St. Lo, and started across France. And I got all the way into the Siegfried Line in Germany when I got wounded on the 19th of September of '44.
Where were you wounded?
I was wounded near Prum, Germany, and I got shrapnel in my foot and in my arm. And my wounds were enough. My foot was no problem, but my arm was. And I had a radial arm injury in that, so it was going to be at least 6 months before I was ready to go back to active service. So if you had that much time, I came back to the States and spent my time in the hospital here.
Where did they send you then? What hospital did they send you to?
I came back to the Stark General Hospital. I landed at the Stark General Hospital in Savannah, Georgia. And from there, I was sent up. They sent you to the hospital closest to your home. And I was sent to the Mayo General Hospital in Galesburg, Illinois.
Oh, uh-huh.
And after a while, I was ambulatory when I came up there. But I still had my arm was healing through eventual operations. And so I was able to get home on weekends. And we lived at my mom and dad's house then. Well, I would come home most every weekend from Mayo and go back. I'd come home on Saturday, go back on Sunday night. And we did that until, we eventually, I was discharged in December 10th of 1945.
How old were you then?
I was 24.
So you were very young to have gone through all that.
Yeah, I was 21 just when the Selective Service Act began. And I was 24, Ruth and I were both 24 when we got married. My birthday was October 1st, 1919, and hers was December 15th of the same year.
And you said that she was pregnant, and so you had a...
My daughter was born 29th of June, 1944.
And is she living in the St. Louis area?
No, she and her husband, my son-in-law, live in Germantown, Tennessee.
Oh.
And
What is her name?
Carol Capra. And my son, Dennis, and his wife, Nancy, live out in Lake Sherwood.
So you have 2 children.
Yeah, 2 kids. I got 4 great-grandchildren and 5, I got 5 great-grandchildren and 4 grandkids.
I see.
And the one, my grandson Kirk and his wife live in Fisher, Indiana, and my daughter, of course, is in Germantown, Tennessee.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay. Yeah,
You've
let's
given
go back
us a
to
pretty
Bridgeton.
good rundown, and so
Yeah.
now we're going to backtrack a little bit. Today is April the 12th,
Yeah.
2011, and we found out that you were born here in St. Louis,
Yeah, over in the Jennings area.
in the Jennings area,
Yeah.
and that your family moved out here and you attended the Fifi
Elementary school.
Elementary School, and then you went, what, 1 year to Rittner?
1 year at Rittner, and then I finished up 3 years at Pattonville.
Okay. Well, tell us about what you remember that Pattonville was like. Did you have bus service?
But no.
No bus?
No. You walked to school or, see, I lived, actually where I was living was just a mile from school.
Okay.
And the streetcar ran from Wellston to St. Charles back in those days.
Wow.
And where Cypress Road is now, there was a streetcar that ran from St. Charles Rock Road over where Cypress Road runs now to Natural Bridge. And that streetcar would run that way, and they wouldn't turn the streetcar around. They just moved the trolley, and it would come back the other way. It was they didn't have a turnaround or anything over there. And that just ran over, and the conductor turned the trolley around, and they ran back. So,
How much did it cost to ride on that?
well, I could, if the weather was bad, and I didn't walk to school, I could ride from, there was a little station, a house down there called Kahn Station, just down the hill from my home.
What was the name of it?
Kahn, K-A-H-N.
K-A.
And I could ride the streetcar from Kahn Station to the station up at Fifi Road for 3 cents. But all the time, most of the time, we just walked.
Yes.
And the streetcar ran right along the area where in front of where this cemetery is now, Lebanon Cemetery, where the school, elementary school is, and right along, it paralleled the Rock Road till it got up to, right where the cemetery starts, and then it veered off and went through the countryside up to St. Charles.
Now, what kind of work did your father do?
My father was a bricklayer,
Okay.
and he was a member of the Pattonville Board of Education
Oh, really?
when we lived out here. And so we
So education was very important for him, for you.
yeah. My parents were real active in the Parent Teachers Association and that at the school, yeah.
And you say you had a brother,
Brother Lawrence, he was 3 years behind me in school.
and he also graduated?
He graduated from Pattonville too, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he married a girl who lived over in Florissant. And he married a Berkey girl. And they lived over in Florissant.
Well, tell us a little bit about the school. Did you have sports or extracurricular activities?
No, we had Glee Club and we put on plays, but we had no organized sport activities. We just had games. We played ball and that at recess time and that, but we never had any intramural sports or anything with other schools. And as I said, the Bridgeton community had just the one-room grade school, and then there was, I don't know how many rooms they had down at Junction, but it must have been more than one. I don't know.
Dad already said he went to a one-room schoolhouse, and all the grades were in one room.
She had one room, just one
Yes.
room at Junction too?
Yes.
Okay, that was the same as Bridgeton. I think Pattonville was the only one that had 8 different rooms. Yeah. So they were the only one that didn't have just their grade in the same room.
Did you bring your own lunch every day to school?
Yeah. Well, no. I would bring lunch once in a while, but there was the school custodian was a Mr. Dismay, and he and his wife lived just half a block down the street from the school, and they had they lived in a place where they had a lunchroom in front, and we used to be able to buy lunch down there.
So you had to leave the school building and walk down to this other
Yeah.
Place.
In fact, we had the AAA had a schoolboy patrol program back in those days, and the schoolboy. I was on the schoolboy patrol, and we used to take the orphan kids from Missouri Baptist. We used to take them up the street, up Fifi, and cross. We supervised their crossing Rock Road and they went home for lunch every day.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
They went home for lunch every day, and then
I see.
we picked them. We'd eat lunch and then go back by the end of lunch hour to see them across the street again.
I see.
So we did that every day, and and we had our school picnics
Where?
on the school grounds.
Oh,
In fact, in May of 1927, we were having our school picnic on May 18th. That when Lindbergh flew into St. Louis, the Lambert Field, with his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, on his way to New York. So our picnic was the same day that he landed in the Lambert Field. And
that's
then
pretty
he went
exciting.
Then he went on to New York and he left there to cross the Atlantic on the 27th of May.
So that's exciting. All of you could say that you saw him.
But we didn't see him, but he flew in.
Right.
Yeah. But we didn't we didn't go over to the airport. Weren't able to see him until he came back from his tour. After he came back, and his plane was on display at the airport. So that was the end of that. And let's see now.
Now tell us, did you have any jobs while you were in high school? Did you work somewhere after school or in summer or anything?
Well, in the summer, see, everything out here was, there was, when you had, Pattonville was a small community. And between Pattonville and St. John's, there was hardly anything but wheat fields. And there were two big wheat fields, one across where the Shop and Save is now, and another one across the street where the Walgreens store is. That was all. And there was Hop was the farmer on one side, and Sholly was the one on the other side. And then there was not much between there and St. John's. So now let's see what. Well, yeah, in the summertime, there were a lot of small farms back up 80 roadway, and I picked in the summertime I would pick strawberries, raspberries, and then in the fall pick potatoes at those farms.
I see.
And so that's what I did in the summertime. During school time, I didn't do any work at all. I mean, but we had, now they did have a deal where they had a program called Works Progress Administration back in those days. They would, that's when the government was paying people to work on highways and things.
WPA.
Yeah. And they had a deal where school we could do certain things, and we got $3 a month, I think. And Ruth and I both worked on those projects at school and we made $3 a month. And we, of course, Ruth and I were able to. We didn't have enough. We weren't able to compete with the big schools in the baseball or anything like that, or football or anything. But back in those days, there was Maryland Heights had a small high school, and Berkeley had a small high school. And we played baseball against each other, but there was no organized league. It was just that 3 teams playing, and that was all the activities we had. And we never played, we had a outside basketball court at high school and tennis courts, but we never played competition. We never played basketball on a competitive basis. So, and when Ruth and I graduated from high schools, we both got jobs, and that was now talking about Bridgeton. After the war, St. Anne's, when Vatterott built St. Anne, why, that was the beginning of the housing boom out here in the Pattonville area.
Mm-hmm.
And where I lived, was unincorporated. And Ruth and I built my mom and dad's house was on the corner of Charles Place and Maxwell Drive in the unincorporated area. And a lot of catty corner across the street from where my mom and dad's house was. that was a vacant lot, or two vacant lots. And while I was in service, my dad called me and said the fellow that owns those lots wanted to sell them for $900. And he said, you ought to buy those. So I bought those two lots. And when I got out of service in 1945, why, Ruth and I had found that was the area of Bridgeton Terrace was. Did you knew about Bridgeton Terrace? The area out there off of Natural Bridge, and there were 3 streets, St. Mary's and something other.
Sure. Yes.
And when Ruth and I when I got out of service, and Ruth and I didn't have a hot place to live yet, so we were looking for housing. And every day we were staying with my mom and dad. And every day we'd get up and I'd go down to St. John's to let's see, it was the deal with Rock. I can't think of the name of the savings and loan that was down in St. John's at that time. Well, anyway, I'd go down to the savings and loan and see if what was on anything for rent. And I went down about there one morning, and there was a house over on St. Mary's Lane that was for rent. And the family that owned it was named Kruger. And they had a store on the corner of the Rock Road and 80 Road. They had a grocery store. And so I talked to the realtor, the rental agent down there, and he said, well, do you have children? I said, yeah, I got one daughter. And she was, of course, just, let's see, she was born in 41, so she was only 3 years old. And he said the owner of the building said he wouldn't rent it to anybody with children because he had a family in there, and they just left it so messy when they moved away that he didn't want any more children. And I said, well, don't rent that to anybody else, because I know Krieger. I've known him since I was a kid, because we shopped at his grocery store. He was right down the hill from where my family lived. And so I went out and talked to Krieger, and he said, oh yeah, you can have it. So we rented that house. And we rented a house for $45 a month, and we lived there until in 48, Ruth and I started to build our house over across the street from where my mom and dad lived.
On the lots that you purchased.
On the lots
I see.
And then we moved into that house in 1949.
And how big was that house?
It was, let's see.
I mean, how many rooms did you have?
It was 3 bedrooms, a living room, a bath and a half, and kitchen and dining room.
Sounds very
It was
nice.
a good size house.
It sounds very nice.
Story and a half.
Very nice.
Yeah. And
did your dad help you with the building since he was a bricklayer?
Yeah. Well, when Dad was working as a bricklayer, the outfit he worked for, they would, if you built one of the fellows was building a house. Well, when he got it up to what they call sill high, to where they could set the windows and doors and everything, then all the fellows who worked for that outfit would give them a day, and they would build the rest of the house and the rest of the brickwork. So they had the house all ready for occupancy, and we did most of the other work, the carpentry and that, ourselves. So we built the house pretty much on our own. We just had to leave digging in the basement and the plumbing and electricity to outside contractors. So we pretty well built the house ourselves.
And how long did you live in that house?
Well, we lived there until I came here. And Ruthie, of course, Ruth passed away in April 20th of 2002. And then I lived there till I moved in here.
So the house is still
The
there?
house, it's sold, yeah.
Do you still own the house, or did you sell?
No, I sold it after I moved here. So I sold it in June of 1909, I guess. So it's been sold, another family living in there now. And of course, my mom and dad's house was sold back when my dad passed away in 1963, and mom had died in 1958. So we sold our house where I grew up, and that year after Dad died.
Well, your children grew up then
Oh,
in
yeah,
that house, and they went to school where?
They went to school in the Fifi Elementary School, and then to Pattonville High School. In fact, my kids went to Pattonville High School, and my great-grandkids went to Pattonville High
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. My grandson Kirk and my granddaughter Erin both went to Pattonville High School.
And
Yeah.
how old are they, those two?
Oh, let's see. Erin is 30 and Kirk is 42. And
Now,
Kirk,
go on, what were you gonna say?
Kirk and his wife live in Fisher, Indiana, and they've got 4 children. And my daughter Erin, granddaughter Erin, has just one little girl, Megan. She's 5 years old. And they both of those families live out in Lake Sherwood now.
Mm-hmm. So when your kids were growing up, where were you working then?
I was working at Hickey Mitchell. I went back, after the war, I went back to where I'd worked I worked there 39, I worked there 2 years before I was inducted into the Army. And I went back there to work. And I worked there until I retired in 1981.
Wow. And would you consider yourself an insurance agent?
Well, no, I had an agent's license. I sold insurance, but I was a vice president of the company. So we had accident insurance that we sold all over the states.
Did your children work part-time while they were in school?
No, they didn't do any much. They didn't work when they were in school at all.
Were they involved? By this time, I'm sure there were more organized things and activities, groups.
Yeah, my grandson played football and basketball at Pattonville. See, by that time, Pattonville had moved over on the
Creve Coeur Mill?
Mill Road, yeah. And the building that was on the hill over behind the the Learning Center now is long gone. That's where, that's where my daughter and son, they went to that school.
I see.
But the grandkids went to the new school over.
Mm-hmm. Did your wife work then after your
Well,
family was started?
She worked at she was this financial secretary at Fifi Church.
Oh,
Yeah. And she worked there for over 20 years.
what changes have you seen in the Fifi church since you were married? Were you married in the chapel church?
The chapel was the only thing there when Ruth and I were married. We were married in the chapel.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the buildings were built part of them were built in the 60s, and the others were built in the 70s. So,
Do you recall anything about a group of gypsies that came to the Maryland Heights area once a year?
they didn't come to Maryland Heights, they were over on Natural Bridge
Oh.
area. Right around where, actually it was right about where the Highway 270 goes through. That was where they used to come to.
Do you remember anything about it, seeing them?
And I just remember their being there, and I don't know I don't remember how long they stayed or anything like that. But you know, as I told you, I never lived in Bridgeton area because we lived in St. Anne. But actually, that's not quite true, because what happened, see, the area where my home, Ruth and I lived, was unincorporated. And St. Anne was big at that time, and Bridgeton area was still small. They were a lot smaller than the St. Anne area, and actually they were smaller than our unincorporated area. So I think you need to check on this, but I think it was in the late 40s, maybe early 50s, that both St. Anne and Bridgeton were vying for annexing our area. And Bridgeton did annex us. And then they realized, the officials there, the mayor was Joe Green, and the officials over there realized that the population in our area was larger than their population. And they thought, we annex them, and the next election, which was coming up pretty soon, they're gonna vote us out and take over.
Oh.
And I think then Bridgeton revoked our annexation, and then St. Anne annexed it. But for a short period of time, Bridgeton did have us annexed, and then they decided they didn't want us because they were afraid we were going to take over.
Oh, you would have been in the majority.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
And you might look in the records and ask over at City Hall if they had actually remembered that.
Do you remember when they were building Northwest Plaza?
Oh, yeah.
What was it like before the shopping center came?
Well, that was the post home.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And the post home was up on the hill there. And they had pasture land there, and Gilbert Adams had a dairy. And he pastured cows on their property, and then he had the area where the St. Anne's shopping mall is now.
Mm-hmm.
That was pasture land. And every morning he'd take his cows across from the area on the south side of the Rock Road over on the area where Cypress Mall is, where the mall is now, and he'd leave them over there and bring them back every day. So that was, and the Coldwater Creek ran through there. And there was still, Cypress Road was a road then, and that streetcar still ran across there. So he had a dairy that delivered milk to the area around here. Now, there was another dairy called Adams Dairy that was down on Eastern Avenue near Wellston, but he wasn't associated with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you say that your wife was named Ruth,
Yeah.
and that she was good friends with Jenny's mother, Helen?
Yeah, Helen and her sister, let's see, her sister's name was can't remember.
Wanda or Leona?
Leona, that's it. And she and Leona and Helen and Ruth and her sister May, they were all friends. They used to bum around together, yeah. In fact, I think I had one date with Helen Bazan.
Now?
She and I went to the movie once, I
In Wellston?
yeah, there were 3 or 4 houses in Wellston. There was the Mikado and the Wellston, and I think there were 3 of them down
The
there.
Ferry?
Hmm?
The Ferry Theater?
Yeah.
Was that open air at that time, or?
The Ferry was an open theater, yeah.
What does that mean, open air?
They had
A
a,
drive-in almost.
Yeah, it was
Walk
like
in
a
a-
drive-in, but it was seats.
Really?
That was further down on Eastern Avenue. It was just on the outskirts.
So you wouldn't sit in your car, you would sit in seats?
No, you parked and you went in just like you were in a regular theater, except there
You
was
were
only a
outside.
screen there, yeah,
Oh,
there was
okay.
no building around you.
was that
Well-
originally a building that had been burned?
No, there was no building there, never was. That was just open as an open theater, yeah.
Did you go to drive-in movies as your family was started?
Yeah, when the drive-in opened up there where the shopping save is now.
The
We-
Airway at St. Anne, was it?
Airway, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Because I know that was a big thing to do when I was
Oh,
younger.
yeah,
The whole
yeah,
family would go.
Yeah.
And it was quite nice.
Oh, yeah.
Well, do you remember anything about the Payne Gentry House? Because, as the Bridgeton Historical Commission, we take care of the Payne Gentry House and offer tours. And I was wondering if you recalled or knew anything about it.
Well, now, the Gentrys, they were Presbyterian. They went to
Yes.
the church across the street from me. Yeah. They
Right,
went to
right here at
Presbyterian,
Mizpah.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
and he was the big mobile over there, yeah. And I don't think they lived in the Gentry house all year long. They lived there, and I think it's just in the summer.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You're
yeah.
right. I think they
They
were in
lived-
Central West End
Either they, yeah, I think
and
so.
came here for the summers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Had you ever been inside of it?
Only since since they no longer Bridgeton took it over.
I
and-
see.
Yeah. So I never was in there when the Gentrys would come out there. No.
I see.
No.
Well, Elizabeth Gentry Syed, who did come here for the summers, she said, told us that she had a pony that she rode, and she talked about coming up for Sunday school at the church that her grandfather was,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
director of the Sunday school or whatever.
Yeah.
And, but she told us that there were gypsies that came each summer, and how everybody was all concerned and worried and
Yeah.
kept an eye on her and the pony.
Yeah. Well, I remember those, but I remember the gypsies actually camped down on Natural Bridge area, but they came around, of course, in the other areas too. But I never had any encounter with them, really.
Was Westlake Park in that area?
So Westlake Park was out out there by where Natural Bridge comes into the Rock Road out there. It was out there at that time. Yeah, we used to go to Westlake Park all the time.
Well, tell us about that. What was it like? Did you pay one fee to get into the park?
Well, you didn't pay any fee to get in, but
Oh.
you paid for each ride you took.
Okay.
Use of there was a swimming pool there that you could pay to use, and but it was, and they used to have well, back in they had a deal out there. They had a big building that had a dance floor and everything, and they used to have those marathon contests. Do you remember?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, where they had couples that they danced, and that for a certain number of ministry each hour, and then they had a short rest period, and they kept dancing again, and they would keep dancing till they got down to the final two couples. They would, if they weren't able to report for a dance while they were out, you know, when they were too tired to continue dancing.
What was the prize if you were the
I
last
don't know.
dancers?
I don't know what the prizes were they got. I think it was monetary, you know, but I don't know how much they got or anything. And people, there were organizations like businesses that would sponsor each couple and take care of paying for their eats and that while they
I
were
see.
in the contest.
I see.
Yeah.
So what did you like best going out to, did you do this while you had your children, while your children were growing up? Do you remember taking children out there to Westlake?
No, not Westlake Park, because that was, let's see, I think by the time my children were big enough to go to the park, well, Westlake Park had closed up.
Oh,
Yeah. In fact, I know the park, Westlake Park was closed up because we had our school picnics at that time. I think we went out to Forest Park Highlands.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What kind of activities do you remember Fifi sponsoring the church while you were raising your children?
Well, let's see. They had just regular church services pretty much. They didn't start doing a lot of activities for the community until late, where we reached out and did things in the community more than we did back then.
What about the Strawberry Festival?
Well, of course, the Strawberry Festival is strictly
Social.
children's home, yeah.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
for
yeah.
the children's home.
Yeah, the Fifi Church was, we would have the church open on those days for people to visit the church, but who were here for the social, but we didn't have anything to do actually with the Strawberry Festival.
Well, we're just about finished with our
Just about-
time.
I thought of one thing that we didn't bring up was, if you remember what you were doing on, when you heard the news of Pearl Harbor.
Oh, well, I was home for the weekend, and Ruth and I had been at my mom and dad's house, and we were on our way driving down Lindbergh to go to her mom and dad over on Gifts Road when we heard the announcement on Sunday morning about Pearl Harbor being bombed.
And where did you hear the announcement on the radio?
On the radio as we were driving over between the two houses, yeah.
And you were already out discharged, right?
No,
Oh,
he was
no,
just in.
I was just starting.
Oh.
In fact, we had sent our wedding announcements, been sent out
Oh.
for telling everybody we were getting married December 20th. And I had a week's leave scheduled. And the first thing they did was cancel my leave.
Oh.
So I wasn't sure I was gonna get back and be able
Married.
to get home for getting married. And I thought maybe my brother would have to be
Stand
getting married
in
in
for it?
proxy for me. So, but I didn't get a full week's leave. All I got was 3 days.
Oh.
So I came home on Friday. We got married Saturday, and had Sunday, and then Ruth went back to work Monday, and I went back to Leonard Wood on Monday.
Thank you very much for your time and
Yeah.
all the great stories, and we really
I'm trying
enjoyed
to
hearing them.
Yeah, trying to think of anything else I might say, but,
Why don't you take one individual picture of
Oh, yeah,
John?
sure.
and, you check on that and see if we weren't annexed by Bridgeton for a short time. There would probably be a record of that, I don't know.